how am I gonna get excited about self-storage? It's like 4 metal walls. Usually my gut sends me in the right direction, but with hiring, it's all out of whack.
Yeah. What's the most challenging storage story that you can tell us?
Someone was conducting an affair.
Oh.
In one of our locations.
No. Welcome to episode 12 of The Sherveen Show, and today it's a conversation with Katharine. She's the co-founder and CEO of Stuf. Stuf is a next-generation self-storage startup. In other words, it's a modern and tech-enabled self-service storage solution. She's completely reimagining a legacy industry, and along the way, not only helping consumers who want to store their stuff, but also helping real estate owners monetize the unused spaces in their commercial buildings. With all of that, let's head into the conversation. Hope you enjoyed this one. Again, episode 12 of The Sherveen Show with Katharine, co-founder, CEO of Stuf. I'm going to, start by saying what I feel is, kind of probably the vibe as you began to incept what you're building was, hey, whether it's WeWork, Industrious, or a bunch of other prop tech plays, all it was looking at real estate and saying, how do we make it more liquid? How do we make the asset more fungible? I don't know if that's the word I want to use. That's the right word.
More money, more exciting.
More exciting, more flexible on a 6-month, 12-month, 18-month basis. Did you explicitly, at the point, let's say we're 6 months before you founding Stuf, were you thinking, hey, I just want to have another play at this and I will figure out what I want to use real estate for? Or was there something with storage in particular that you saw either because there was something interesting happening in storage at the time, where storage is particularly fascinating? Was it real estate or was it storage? I know it's both.
It's both. It probably started from the real estate side. And because I was at Industrious, and prior to that, I was working for a developer, owner-operator. I've just been through a lot of buildings. Retail, office, multifamily. And so often these brokers would take me through and say, look at my office, look at my amenity space, look at this, that. I'm like, we just walked by a huge basement.
No one's in there.
Here? And nobody ever had a good answer. And during the pandemic, we were all baking sourdough bread and all that, but I kept a journal, and every idea I put in this journal was, hey, how do we monetize real estate? And so actually in March, April of 2020, restaurants were really going out of business or really struggling. And so I was like, I'm going to start a ghost kitchen concept. We're going to monetize this weird, funky space as ghost kitchens. And
compete with Travis.
Yeah, and people much smarter than me talked about grease traps and this, that, and other thing. And so that was not the concept. Looked at doggy daycare, looked at data centers, looked at so many different things. And one of my now investors said, hey, Kat, look at self-storage. And I was like, that's boring. That's not cool.
Billboards on highways.
Because at this point, I've worked at Equinox, I've worked at Industrious, so really cool branded experiences rooted in real estate. But at the same time, I did a spring cleaning, and I started looking at storage for myself. And so the more I looked into the industry as a business user or as a investment opportunity or business concept, the more I was like, there's a huge opportunity here, right? For everything that doesn't feel sexy or cool or interesting, that means there's a huge gap between where I think we can go and where it is today. So that's really where we're working to reimagine the self-storage experience, not only for the end user, but making it a play for commercial landlords to make some more money.
So it's really interesting because from a storage perspective, and we can get into kind of the business model, but I assume so much of that is capital heavy, just like everything else in prop tech, both in that prior generation of WeWork and otherwise. Did you fear any of that, or does your past experience tell you, okay, now I'm going to be good. I'm going to be a good operator, and I will do the right sort of deals. I will make this more flexible than.
Well, I did the right sort of deals before, so no fear.
No fear,
because I figured it out.
Business model wise, is that what we're going to learn?
Yes, okay. For this business model. And
so let's actually dive in then.
Yeah. So one thing that I pioneered at Industrious, and really in the co-working space, because Industrious was first to do this at scale, was asset and liability agreements. So really revenue sharing or profit sharing. And then the asset light part is, landlords would really contribute a significant amount into the build out. So it wasn't just Industrious or WeWork funding the capital. And so that's something that I pioneered. And luckily, storage costs a lot less to build out. And the spaces that we're talking about are really forgotten spaces. So the basements, the garages. So this is now a new rental opportunity, a new rental stream that landlords can enjoy. And so what we do is the business itself is B2B2C. The B2B part is us with commercial landlords. That's a revenue sharing agreement. Again, they're participating in the CapEx build out investment. And then on the B2C side, that's the month-to-month agreements with storage users, tends to be consumers, businesses. And so that part of the business is newer to me because my experience was mostly on the, hey, landlord, real estate facing side, not necessarily the consumer facing side. But now I find that side so exciting. And so I guess because I'm learning a lot and it's fun.
So you now have this relationship with consumers, mostly consumers, some businesses, where basically you say, hey, I'm creating this network of unused but now newly revitalized space. You need some self-storage on the cheap. You need it cheaper than the self-storage options that exist today. You need it maybe closer.
Sometimes more expensive.
Oh, more expensive. Closer? More convenient?
Yeah.
Okay.
Tech-enabled, then we'll get into that.
Okay,
yeah.
Great. And then on the B2B side is that revenue. It's that, hey, this might not come back anytime soon. Offices are not coming back anytime soon.
Yeah.
Your use of this space was already inefficient, and now it's inefficient on top of undesired.
Yeah.
There are a few others in this space, and I want to almost use that conversation as a proxy. Yeah. The one that comes to mind for me, I feel like I even have met the founder at Clutter. Feels like the most popular startup in this space
recently.
Right.
Yeah.
After some hard times, maybe.
Yeah.
What is it about storage that made that investor or whoever it was, that person who called you and say, look into storage, and then you were looking into storage, and then other startups have spent tons of money trying to solve and compete in storage. What is it about storage that's appealing on the consumer side of things, the the demand of the market?
For all the successes and failures of a Clutter, there is still a $55 billion self-storage industry that exists outside of that. And so Clutter was very niche. But when 1 in 10 U.S. households rents a storage unit, you need a lot of storage.
Oh, wow, 1 in 10.
Yeah. You need a lot of storage to serve that.
Interesting.
I mean, we're American, right? So Americans just have a lot of stuff. And it's interesting because you now see the self-storage becoming more prominent in Southeast Asia, in Europe. And so unfortunately, or fortunately, there's a lot of need for storage, right? Like people living in smaller apartments, trying to size down. The move to office flex means that businesses now don't need a whole office, right? They'd rather have storage or...
There's a lot of stuff we have in this office that I would like to push.
I'm looking at it all, and I'm about to send you a discount code.
There we
go. But getting back to your original question, Clutter was very niche at the time, and it was on demand. And I actually did a lot of research about Clutter.
On demand, and it was tech-enabled as well, right? That was the main value prop-ish?
I think, yeah. But
they were using probably more traditional warehouses.
I think they forgot that people, their things are very personal to them. And so for all the convenience you get from someone coming, lifting your stuff, moving it into the truck.
Because that was their thing.
Yeah, and then bringing it back whenever you wanted, you have no visibility into where's my stuff? Did all my stuff make it? Did something get broken? And so when you look at the customer reviews and really analyze what's the user experience, I think there were just inherent failures because of how that storage was delivered. And so for us, we're true self-storage, right?
Oh, interesting.
You move your stuff in, but the tech-enabled piece is that everything is done on your mobile device, booking, search, all that. But more importantly, every location is remotely operated. So our software that we've built in-house integrates with the IoT devices, the access control systems, the security cameras. We're starting to pilot AI-powered security monitoring so that we can always be alerted if there's suspicious activity or...
So let's dive into the user experience here. This is because a user is literally, after they do whatever they do on the app, they're going to the space themselves.
Which, by the way, don't take for granted, because most of self-storage right now is still you go into an office, you talk to the manager for an hour, and then you move it. That's the majority of the experience today. So I know for us in New York City, on our mobile app, it doesn't sound like much, but it's actually a pretty big advancement.
Right.
Yeah.
And then they go into a space that is basically like a tech-enabled version of what I've never actually used any form of storage in my life. So I envision
you walk in.
Is it kind of like what we'd see in a TV show with the garage doors, but there are 17 of them in a row?
Infrastructure, yes.
Okay, cool.
But things that were, not every location has it, but like music, right? When you walk in, it feels quiet and sterile. It's like, is anybody here? But if Justin Bieber is playing Yummy, in the background, you're like, okay, this feels a little bit more familiar. Definitely art or wall decals, so that in addition to wayfinding, it's like you feel something when you arrive. Like, oh, this draws my attention away from the door after door after door after door of self-storage, right?
Which is really kind of like, it's funny, the reason I can conjure that image is because it's the site of so many movies and films that have used that as like where the crime happens.
Breaking Bad.
Breaking Bad. It's just like constantly where bad things happen.
But that's what we have to battle against, right? We're actually faced with the stigma of self-storage.
Wait, can I say something? I want to ask you this.
Yeah.
Like, I don't mean it as harshly as it sounds. Is that really important, founder to founder, right? Like, it's so interesting you're saying this. It resonates, but I also go, doesn't the person just want to store things?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
It's both.
But
or let me ask you this question, like very, again, founder style. Like if I gave you $10 million on an uncapped note and said, but now you can't brand anything. It has to feel like old classic storage.
Yeah.
Do you think it would still work?
Would I do it again? It would work, but it wouldn't do as well, and it wouldn't make as much money, and it wouldn't grow as quickly.
There's a resonance with the brand.
Yeah. I mean, like if you look at self-storage, it's kind of like clipping a coupon. It's a very sticky product. But for us, what we're really trying to fill is that gap of like Gen Z millennial users, which are now over 50% of users. And they access their items on a weekly or monthly basis, whereas boomers access maybe once a year, once a quarter. And for them, the brand doesn't matter, right? Because you're just there so rarely. But for us, our customers are in and out. They need that convenience. They want to feel like it's somewhere they want to visit, or they don't mind visiting, right?
So this is really about the thematic shift from a demographic perspective. To your point about we're in small apartments.
Well, I think it's like in real estate, these branded experiences. Why stay at a Marriott? Why stay at a Four Seasons? Why work at a Industrious?
Right.
Relative to like, I don't know, like any of these office buildings in New York City. So these branded experiences are really what people are moving towards.
For the consumer, though, that means a more expensive life. It's already true because like smaller apartments, and so they need options, right? But are the millennials and the Gen Z folk using the app basically like signing up and going, okay, great, for the rest of my life, I'm going to have my home and I'm going to have my storage unit?
Yeah, it's
interesting.
For the modern generations, it's an extension of their lifestyle. For boomers, it's stuff that they inherited from their grandma and that they're not going to touch, right? And so if you need your skis or you need your golf clubs or your baby stuff or your business inventory or whatever it is, you need that more regularly. And so you would either pay up or seek out a better experience because you will be spending more of your time there.
Right.
And much more important, that it's close by so that you don't need that half-day trek to go get to your stuff.
It reminds me of like Amazon lockers. I know that's like a, weird, probably, it sounds like the analogy hits, but like the closer the Amazon locker got you, the more likely you were to use an Amazon locker as a delivery location, return items using that locker.
Yeah.
And you're kind
of doing
the same thing.
And then you build your life around it and you're stuck.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and so, okay, let's for a moment walk away from the consumer and talk about the business side of things or the landlord side of things. I get frustrated with landlords. So we just moved into this office like a month ago. And, part of the conversation I had with everybody while we were trying to rent was, why are you being so stubborn on price? I get it. You don't want to like have this new anchored low rent and you have to go back to your bank and, there's all sorts of dynamics, but you're not going to make money if you don't lower your rent. You are screwed for the next, 2 years at least.
Yeah.
Why are you not doing something different? Whether it's giving me cheaper rent or finding an alternative way to monetize.
Oh, this is a hard one.
You're an expert in this space. You've probably met more landlords than I will meet in my life. What's the sympathetic view of them in this moment before we get to like...
The sympathetic view. Oh, wow.
Why are they resisting? Yeah.
Sometimes a building is worth more on paper than in real life.
Does that... so that's what I often hear.
Yeah.
Is that literally economically
Literally,
true,
the financial model says that.
Sure. Yeah. I guess like when they then don't rent it out and they then don't have tenants for however many years and all of that plays out negatively, are they still better off than if they would have given it a little?
It really depends what the cost basis is for that owner. If they're a generational holder and if they don't have debt, they might hold out. If they're an institutional investor that has like a closed-end fund and they have to buy and sell and every 5 years, they're in a little bit more trouble and they're more willing to do a deal with you, most likely. If any owner out here is in special servicing or working with their lender, they're kind of like, I can't even focus on leasing or getting you a good deal because I just need to save this building. So it really depends. So nuanced. And so I think that's part of the reason why it's difficult to scale a business in real estate, but why only certain people can. Right.
So in that nuance, what convinces them to make this particular investment over others?
I think for us in particular, it's, hey, this unforgotten or this forgotten unsellable space that you have here is now worth something and we'll pay you rent on it. And so they can now include that in their Argus model and they could put a cap rate on it and it might be worth something to them. But
do you pay them like a tenant would in terms of like literally like how competitive?
Because self-storage is so sticky and because it's revenue sharing, we can pay them a consistent rent. It's not a fixed rent, but it's consistent.
Oh, interesting. So do they have to count it the same way from an accounting perspective?
If they are a REIT, there's some special nuances. So you have to do gross revenue sharing. But otherwise, you can do kind of like net revenue. So there's certain netted out costs.
And they're basically committing to the space being fitted out.
So we do all the work, but they'll fund it. They'll fund the majority of it.
How long does that philosophically commit them to the concept of like, we're now part storage?
Yeah, we generally sign anywhere from 7 to 10 year leases with extension options. So they really have to believe.
And they have to believe too that there's an tenant coming.
But they will believe because they're generally paid back within 12 months.
Okay.
And so if you're seeing that momentum and those revenue reports, and that's much more meaningful than an office lease that might pay back in 3 to 4 years. And nowadays it's 5 to 7 years. So it's painful out there.
So let's go back to like the first one you sold and had to like build out. That feels like a hard challenge as a founder compared to like, if I'm building some software and my MVP is me over email, providing value to a customer versus you had to get something, to these people in terms of physical infrastructure. You had to get a customer to actually store with them.
I mean, yes and no. The physical side of things is really what, like the real estate, that's all stuff that I have experience with, working with construction teams, design teams. And usually it was in-house teams that I worked with, but you're right. Like the first time I had to work with the vendors directly and speaking their language. And I think most groups knew I knew what I was talking about, so I could at least ask the right questions, even if I didn't have the right information.
Right.
And so that first one, we built out in a couple weeks and it filled up in 2 months.
How so fast? It feels like I haven't got to this yet. Okay, fair enough. But there's like a matching problem that you have to solve after you solve the like.
Oh yeah, that's the
build
B2C
storage
side.
And then let me fulfill this near you.
Yeah, I mean it was really scrappy stuff. It's like signage. It's listing on different marketplaces. It's
is that still what it is
reaching
today?
out to yes and no.
Okay.
I think we're doing a lot of things much better nowadays.
But it does seem hard because like if I'm thinking I do want to store something, I now know you. But otherwise I would have been like, what billboard have I seen? What signage have I seen for like a legacy storage company?
And like you would Google it and Google Maps is my best friend.
Right.
And we're just going to show up in that geo-targeted search because we are closer.
Right.
So there's a lot of things to figure out. I mean, because of my real estate experience, I'd always mostly worked on the enterprise, B2B side. And so tinkering with Google Ads, what is this? And so I have it was a very humbling experience really learning that side of the business. And again, I find that part so interesting. And mostly because it's like the customer psychology is so unique and customers are so different, even if they might appear to be the same and the use cases are different and the stuff people store, it's just all over the place. So that is fun too.
So here's like an interesting question that you might not have like either an answer to or might be really obvious to you and immediate. As time passes, do you change from the perspective of you're this tech-enabled prop tech company, you're like finding new uses of space and storage is the thing. And And storage is like a word that can mean different things. I think, you're talking about this short term, I need to touch my items. Then there's a concept you mentioned, some clients are businesses. So there is this, kind of more big items, big spaces sort of deal. It feels like you are well positioned to find all sorts of ways to help commercial landlords figure out how to monetize space that will now go unused. If I'm you, I wonder if I can't sleep at night because I go, should I only do storage? This is like a once in a lifetime, death trap that commercial landlords are in. How else can I take advantage?
Yeah.
Or is storage just so compelling that it's not distracting that I don't know, again, this might be completely not even a thought in your brain.
2 thoughts.
Yeah.
Storage is super compelling.
Okay, there we go.
Financially and just as a business problem.
Yeah.
And then the second one is if you're not focused, you're just not going to do anything well.
Right.
And so now if I'm like, oh, we're really good at monetizing space, let's do ghost kitchens. Not going to do that well. And if I then layer on things.
Talk to these landlords, you sell them 1 floor of storage, maybe 2.
Yeah.
But they have
We
another
have landlords
5.
who are like, hey, Kat, can you run a co-working space for us? Can you do this? And I'm like,
no,
it just
that's
doesn't make sense.
powerful. Again, maybe it's because I'm such an outsider to it, but it feels like their need is so high that again, probably the wise choice to avoid fulfilling it.
Yeah.
But you probably have, to your point, your partners are looking to you and going, oh, help.
Yeah. I think an easy way to explain it is just there's higher ROI in storage.
Right.
And the self-storage industry in general. So it's not just the storage that we, that's our core product, or it is today, but I have a lot of ideas for how we might serve the self-storage industry in the future. I won't delve into that, but it's just a very lucrative, sticky, fragmented industry that's probably 10, 15 years behind most other industries. So I think the opportunity there is so exciting. And for me, when I first started, I was like, how am I going to get excited about self-storage? It's 4 metal walls and, but I think what I get excited about, and it's true of co-working and even my experience before that, was how do we redefine consumer experiences in the physical world? And everything is in the physical world, right? Right now that's storage, but it could be other things down the road, to your point. But that's what gets me really excited about what I do.
How'd you get people around you, investors in particular, excited about it? It feels like a hard sell.
It's not.
Interesting.
I think there is so much curiosity about self-storage. There's on Twitter or X, there's a whole self-storage
guy.
culture.
There's a self-storage guy or something, a storage guy, right?
What's his name? It's
Isn't that his name? Isn't that
it might be
one of them? They're these guys,
and they're like, make all this money.
Right.
I just think there's a lot of interest in that space, and people are asking themselves, well, why isn't there a brand that's trying to redo things?
Right.
And that's really us,
right?
Because Public Storage, Extra Space, they're not rebranding, they're not trying to elevate the customer experience. And then obviously Clutter was kind of the closest thing to that, but I think in many ways it's kind of plateaued at this point. So I get very energized about what we're doing in the space and the attention that we're getting, because I think we're doing a really good job.
What's the most challenging storage story that you can tell us? Whether it's weird things stored or weird things happened, along the way. I want to know.
Oh yeah, I have an obvious one.
Let's go.
Someone was conducting an affair.
Oh.
In one of our locations.
No. Oh, so this is the classic. I think this happens in traditional storage too. People use it to live in almost.
But I mean, we don't let that happen. We actually have address verification, which no other storage company has.
Oh, interesting.
So we first ensure that you're not homeless, that you have a home through a utility bill, bank statement, something like that.
Oh, interesting. Why?
Well,
I mean, it seems smart in hindsight,
space, right? And so,
but you're saying other people don't do it. Why don't other people do it and you do?
Because they just want to make more sales.
Interesting. Okay, just economically.
But I want to make good sales.
Yeah.
Sustainable sales. Sales that are not going to result in problems down the road.
Hey, Ashley Madison was a big company at some point.
That was a big company. Yeah.
Wait, so how did you find out?
One of the doormen at the building called us and was like, hey, I heard these noises.
No.
And so we have these field technicians that float around. So I went to check it out. And then immediately we're like, you got to go.
Yeah.
You're not following the rules and regs and all that sort of stuff. But the
it's
next
really
day,
a community in some ways.
He came back with a different woman. And then the doorman was like, hey, he's having a fight with somebody, but it's a different somebody. And so he was conducting an affair, I guess, or like maybe he shared it with his girlfriend, but he brought his other girlfriend. I don't know the specifics. I just thought that was really interesting. It was the first year of our operation. I was like, what did I get myself into? But I think we're much better at vetting, customers through that address verification.
It's so funny. It's a very WeWork kind of story in some ways. Two thematic questions about being a founder, and then I'm going to go to the crowd for questions they might have. First, it's an interesting time in general for all founders in terms of team building and the availability of venture and money and the cost of capital. At a high level, if you're talking to a founder, whether they're in prop tech in particular or more broadly, what's something you think founders aren't talking enough about that's really challenging right now in the space?
I spend a lot of time with female founders, people of color, and I think a lot of those conversations feel
I think I just read a headline in my
hampered
email.
down because it's like when money is not readily available, it's like I think we often feel, oh my God, now we have to work even harder for it. So that's probably the thing that's not talked about so much.
Funding for startups founded by women is down significantly compared to recent years. I feel like I read this headline every 6 months. I'm opening the pitch book link to see if there's interesting detail. Do you experience, I every time there's a female founder who gets into the subject, I tend to ask, do you like talking about being a female founder? Or you type
Okay. Yeah. I have 2 kids. I had 2 kids in the last 4 years since the company's been around and built a great business. So I think...
Follow-up question.
Yeah.
Worst treatment as a founder from VCs from that
I've been really lucky. There's never been an, oh my God, that was a horrific experience.
You are lucky.
I'm so lucky. But there's always the kind of passive comment. And I think oftentimes the other side doesn't even realize. So I've been very lucky.
What percentage of dollars in 2023 do you think went to companies solely founded by women?
It was 2%, right?
Yeah, I guess is in the crowd. 2.1%.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, the algorithms know how to send that to me. Yeah. So I'm pretty loud and proud when I talk about, hey, we're winning, we're strong. Because I think other people, women especially, need to hear that. And I'm doing it while raising a family. That's some hard shit, And so you just have to be loud and proud about it. Otherwise, how else are you going to lift people up?
Totally. Speaking of, kind of family, the other thing I like to talk to founders about is team building in recent years is, I think, a challenge for all startup CEOs, the other family. What's been interesting in building the team?
It's like when you think you're good at hiring, you're probably not. You think you're doing the right thing.
There's no such thing.
I'm a very intuitive person, and usually my gut sends me in the right direction. But with hiring, it's all out of whack. The compass, the radar, and folks that feel great in an interview sputter.
Yep.
And then people you're like, amazing.
Yep.
And so my recruitment process involves so many people. And usually when we have a consistent read on somebody, that's the person that we want to go with because they're consistent and I think getting other perspectives is very important. So that's been the most challenging. I find I like to give some sort of critical feedback or something like that during the interview process.
See the reaction.
Yeah. And I like to have a real conversation.
Yeah.
And some people can meet you there.
Yeah.
Because building startups, that's hard shit. So you have to be open and feel comfortable. And some people just can't get comfortable. And I get it, it's an interview. So you kind of have that wall up. But generally, the people that I can have a real conversation with do better later on.
It's interesting, the notion of the randomness of it all. I tell, because at Free Agency we deal with job seekers every day, how is that representation for tech talent? And I tell them, you have to have sympathy for recruiters and companies in general because they're just as lost in this process.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel as personal to them as it does to a job seeker who's experiencing, either they're fired or they're not getting the job, whatever it might be. But companies have not figured it out. People have not figured out how to hire. We have no idea what works at the end of the day. And I think that that reminder can make people also smarter at interviewing. And it's like, okay, great. This person across the table also has no idea whether this is going to work out. So let's have a conversation.
Yeah. Also, on Friday, I called 2 people to say, hey, I gave the job to somebody else. And they were like, thank you so much for calling. And I'm like, I feel like that's like a base minimum. You spend hours, case study, interviews, meetings. And so I just feel like so much of the humanity of building a team and a startup team is probably gone because we're all trying to move so fast. But
it's also hard in light of like, I think a lot of companies are struggling with how many applications they're getting. The AI responses as part of applications. It's only going to get worse. I've been warning people that like job search is going to break.
It just feels so inhuman. The way they respond. And I was like, oh God, you wounded it like bird or, you know. So I feel like for all the automation and efficiency that we're all striving for, there's still the human aspect to it. And that's
feels like that's what you're doing with
and that's
stuff
like
too.
What my team loves.
Right.
Because like the team that we can just be real with each other and talk. We want to spend time with each other. Everyone is asking like, when's the next offsite? And so I just feel so like motivated by my team, and my job is to motivate them, but it goes in both ways, right? Yeah.
Again, feels like what you're doing even just with self-storage in some ways, like keeping that human aspect to something a little bit transactional, I guess.
Make it something that you actually want to do or visit or see.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love it. Okay, questions from the crowd. Go ahead.
A self-service customer journey that's almost entirely self-service.
Entirely.
Mobile app and with greater customer visibility of their own properties through the deployment of IoT devices. Do you develop kind of a real estate domain-specific technologies entirely in-house, or you partner with some technology?
Oh, that's a great question. I'm going to restate it a little bit so the mic picks it up.
Okay.
It's like, do you is the stuff you're building on the build out of the storage units and all the technology you mentioned, is that all in-house development, proprietary tech, and I don't know if you were asking this, but even almost white labelable to others in the space, or is that stuff that also you're buying from some of the vendors off the shelf?
We're building it in-house, or we've built it in-house. It's called Stuf OS. We do have, external API integrations.
I really like that. I don't know why it hits.
And before we built it, I looked at a lot of different vendors, and most of what I saw, I was like, this looks like it should run on Windows XP. Just like didn't feel intuitive, and it felt really clunky. And because there's one company that has a little bit of a monopoly, so you don't have flexibility in terms of API integrations and who you want to partner with. So it's like, okay, we have to build it in-house. And we're kind of like a niche self-storage product, at least now. And so I hired an engineer, and she built the damn thing. Like, it's amazing. And that has been I've learned so much through that process. And I really, really love UI UX. And I think our team is pretty empathetic to like the customer journey, right? Because so much of, initially when we built it out, I was like, oh, this is easier for me. This is easier. Like, that'll be easier for ops. Okay, but what's easier for the customer? How do they experience this space? And at what moments do they need the mobile device to drive that experience? And at what point do they need a physical experience? So it's a long way of saying we built it in-house, and I'm really, really glad we did.
Are you so empathetic to the user such that you're going to try to sell this to others to also proliferate this user experience? Or how do you do that?
That's a potential path on the roadmap. We've certainly had other more mom and pop
What would be a
owners.
reason, to definitely say no? I feel like there are a lot of reasons to say yes, monetization, and you're never going to have every single location in this space. But like, if you have to think, again, look to your like the founder's point of view in this moment of going like, but I don't want to give this away, and here are like tangible things I fear on the other side of that, other than the lack of focus thing.
It's not the most likely path forward because I feel like there's so many other products out there doing something similar. And we can build one better, but to now convince 55,000 storage facilities in America to change out their entire operation.
Because nothing you're doing is novel from a tech perspective, it's UX. And so to go to somebody else and go, care about your customer as much as we do, that's actually a hard sell.
Yes. And spend all this money, time, energy just to make, 10, 15% more.
Right.
A lot of people are lazy. They don't want to do that. And so
Well,
I think
storage is
the,
a game of
go-to-market
getting
is
real
tough.
estate. Yeah, that's really
I think the
interesting.
go-to-market is tough for a management software like that. But I think there's more unique, interesting products that we can pursue that right now we're building in-house to serve our own purpose. But
Are you going to help people store items in each other's homes with Stuf OS one day?
that's being done already.
Really?
Yeah. There's a company that does it.
That both surprises me and doesn't.
It's hard because you need to walk through someone's house to get to their basement or to get to their closet. And so I think it's a unique customer, a very cost-sensitive customer who'd be willing to do that with all the inconvenience types.
But it's interesting. There's almost like this other distressed asset owner in the form of Airbnb hosts who in different cities are struggling.
Probably in New York,
regulation.
especially.
Yeah, New York.
Yeah.
Like I wonder if they're just the same sell to them as commercial landlords.
I mean, would you want someone walking through your house?
Well, I don't like Airbnb in general, so no.
Okay, so no. Okay.
I don't like staying at Airbnb. I wouldn't host in that way.
Oh, really?
I like a hotel.
It. I love it for family occasions.
I love a clean hotel where I know it's been taken care of by staff.
Oh, I like cooking.
I do see, a long weekend with a lot of people.
Yeah.
There's a different vibe.
Okay. Yeah.
But I couldn't imagine letting someone, I don't have enough space, first of all.
That's why you need storage.
If I did, well, that's, by the way, I wanted to ask and then I'll go to other crowd questions. But before I forget this, I have an apartment that has storage in the unit.
Yeah.
You have to pay more. I don't need it right now. How do you view residential real estate folk in this light? Do you try to sell to them at all? Is this
always?
And is this something that could be like a management company serving their own? Okay, interesting. Tell us more.
There's still not enough.
Okay, storage.
Yeah, I don't know if your building has unsold storage, but you might have to join a wait list.
I think when I joined the building, there was 2 units left in a pretty big building.
Something like that. So the demand in New York City outweighs the supply, and even if that supply includes self-storage facilities and residential supply in the apartments. So New York is a really great market for us. And then, if you go to more suburban areas, I'm sure there's more like 1-for-1 storage.
Are
but it's not the right size for most people. Like outside of New York, you're looking for a 5x10, 10x10, 10x15, because you're storing rooms worth of stuff.
Right, furniture.
Yeah, and even if you live in an apartment building, that cage is probably 3x3.
Right.
So it's not enough.
Have you thought of using, you might do this lightly right now, but aggressively and maybe full force, like using residential management companies as a channel partner?
Oh, yeah.
Is it a big deal?
We partner with a bunch.
Does that work? I mean, I guess I asked that question because I could imagine them caring and going like, this is an amenity and we'll even subsidize cost or something.
Yeah, it definitely works. In Seattle, we have a location that's right next to an apartment building. That manager sent out one email and we reached 25% occupancy in a week.
Wow.
And so I think it's really powerful because not only can we serve the demands of their tenants, but it's win-win, right? Because we then get that revenue and those sales. So I think what you're getting at is is it competitive or not?
Right.
I think certain situations it could be, but in general it's not, because I think there's a mismatch of what type of supply. Is it the right size that people need? And so that's where I think the mismatch is.
Super interesting. Other questions? Go ahead.
Can customers of Stuf, can they give access to anyone to their storage?
No. We will have kind of shared agreements, but you need to approve the original renter.
Why do you ask that question? I'm curious.
Well, I think that's a strategy in the future. Someone could leave an item in a storage, give access details.
Yeah.
But they need the details to get in, so it's secure that way.
Yeah.
Tech-enabled.
Versus like a key in the traditional unit
it's
too.
Like they're renting an item.
So we need the original renter to approve additional access. But what you don't want is 20 different people having the same access to the same unit, right? Because there's so much.
Would you want 20 different people to this is really interesting. If I am this is a weird example. I don't know if this makes sense, but if I'm an Etsy seller and I have large items and I leave it at my stuff drawer for people to come pick up.
It's funny because it wouldn't be the core business, but we've been thinking about last mile logistics.
Because I was thinking
something
so
that.
close to different places.
Yeah. Hyper local network of real estate, really. It could be storage, but to your point, it could be many other things. So we've played with that. We're still a small team of 11. So to lose focus on now building another product, we really have to validate it. And right now, the core business does really well. So we want to keep scaling that.
How do you avoid the 20 people sharing one unit problem?
All the IoT devices. Yeah. And you can't get access unless you have the digital key. So there's a lot of different ways to do it.
Super.
The app called Latch to get into.
Yeah.
So then the access codes can change
Yes.
constantly.
Yeah.
So you could do that and then they could get access, but they're giving it out to their friends or family.
People want it. I even have my brother's latch too. So I understand what you're talking about.
Yeah.
But their building manager would probably be really mad if they knew that I had his latch.
You can get certain ones that.
Yeah, like a guest code. Yeah. There's still security risks around that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because who are you now introducing into the space?
You seem to be
it's just like
taking
you
a very-
create a bigger problem when you think you fixed another problem. So you always have to weigh those two things.
Creating the WeWork version, I don't mean to like put WeWork on you, but like part of the thing that like I think is a positive here is you going like, I care about who else is storing next to all of my users in a way that like, will you add a keg one day?
Yeah.
And some couches?
No.
It kind of would work given how you think about the user experience.
I think things that seem on the surface really nice for a customer might be really bad for most other customers, right? Because if you have a sofa, you've now encouraged someone to lay on that sofa. And now when someone else walks in, it's like, who is this guy laying on the sofa, right? And so
And even if like there's a lot of traffic and suddenly I want something that's large out of one of my units and I can't because there's too many people.
You can't maneuver through the hallway. And so there's so much consideration. I think when I first started, I was like, we want to add, plants and this and that and make it so pretty. And it's like, functionally, it actually won't work or it'll hurt us. So it's always the balance of those two things.
Super interesting.
Yeah.
Hi, guys. Congratulations on building the business. I guess fundraising is obviously very hard, and I know you kind of avoid it. But talking about your particular effort fundraising in this climate, what have you felt is one of the things that's been particularly insightful to shoot up?
It's rough. I raised the Series A in December 2022 or January 2023, like pretty much the last day of the year. And
not an easy time. That was already pretty late.
Consumer was already kind of like,
Yeah.
And prop tech, So what I did, obviously I used like all my investors, I used all their networks, and still was like just not finding the traction that I wanted. We luckily had a co-lead term sheet. So like had someone who said, hey, we'll co-lead, but we need that other person. And so the most tactical thing I can advise is, and someone shared this with me, get a PitchBook account. It's like $10,000, $15,000 a year. And it sounds like a lot of money, but if you can raise $1 million, $3 million, $5 million, spending $15,000, it's super helpful. And then you can see, so what I did is I researched all investors who had invested in consumer in the last 12 months. So I knew that they had some sort of appetite. So I was essentially like targeting a specific customer. And PitchBook was really good about sharing historical transactions and, who's the partner and just all these pieces of information. And it allowed me to now dwindle down a list to like 25. And I did a huge roadshow in SF where I just like boom, 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 tried to meet as many people, cold emailed, networked, found anybody I knew that could intro me to specific people, but also researched the right people at those firms. So that PitchBook account really is what led me to now one of my lead investors from the last round. And I usually don't hear tactical advice when I hear, like when founders talk about
storytelling advice is usually,
But I was like, just get the PitchBook account. Yeah.
I have a grudge with PitchBook though.
Okay. No, I mean, like, I'm not really a customer
This
anymore.
Is not a real grudge. Her advice is very good, but I just have to now say I need to say that.
Crunchbase.
It's better than Crunchbase, but they won't offer anything lower than their $15,000 seat. So we wanted to subscribe for like our clients on like we have job seekers we support, and I want that info. There's an email thread that's probably 52 emails long with my AE over there. We subscribed at some point, but after, the
but
fundraising
you can do
environment.
quarterly payments, so it's not such a hit.
Why can't they have like a $5,000 tier or like a $$3,000
I think
tier?
they have like a seed stage. It might be even cheaper
Wait.
for like the like early
He
stage.
I email he either emails
It probably
me.
means you're too legit, so he can tell.
No, but we have an email thread where it's basically like anything for 3,000, anything for 2, anything for 4.
I don't think they'll go there. Yeah, I tried.
It's worth it though, just to like add on to this tactical advice. If you think about why better than Crunchbase, it's the thing you said and the thing that I think founders should follow. It's like you get to see the partner information, the deal information is more accurate. Like I think a lot of people when they use Crunchbase are public lists on industry and like who funds what.
But this is all probably like mostly publicly available, but imagine the amount of time you save, right?
And when
Consolidating
you're wrong,
it.
you're like, but you could have been right.
Yeah.
That is like that's the thing to regret is like, oh, I got this partner when it was actually this partner who did the prop tech deal. This one doesn't care at all.
Yeah.
And you never meet this person.
Yeah, and as a founder, you don't really have that much time. So if you're in back-to-back Zoom intros with these investors, you want to be able to pull it up on one screen and kind of like just know everything you need to know to at least ask a couple interesting questions. So that has been the most tactical advice that I received that actually worked for me. And so I share it with everybody. Yeah.
A final question for you, because I have to ask, is it hard being named Stuf? I feel like the misunderstandings that can happen, I'm building stuff. It's like you're just like, you're at a co-working event and someone's like, oh, fine, don't tell me what you're building. Be like that.
Yeah, I'm building stuff.
Things,
and then
stuff and
when
things.
you clarify it, it becomes very memorable.
That's true. I have not
you're
forgotten
gonna say
the
like,
name of your company
blah, blah,
since I
blah,
saw it.
AI. Like, oh, okay, here's another one.
Yeah.
But when you say stuff, and they're like, what's stuff? And you're like, oh, stuff with one F, and it's self-storage. And they're like, oh, like that's a cute name. That's really memorable. So yes, but no.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Kat, this has been a super fun conversation. Thank you so much. Round of applause for you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.